Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's webcast entitled PRIMEChat, Better Insights, Better PR-ROI. Peppercomm CEO Steve Cody joins PRIMEChat in December to share his experiences and insights into the research-driven agency. Peppercomm is one of the world's few mid-sized agencies with a dedicated research team devoted to helping clients set smarter objectives, develop better strategies, plan more compelling execution, and evaluate results. As a result, Peppercomm clients gain the benefits of improved performance and greater efficiency. Sharing this session is Mark Weiner, CEO for Prime Research LP and Chairman of IPR's Commission on Measurement and Evaluation. Together, Steve and Mark will explore the ways by which professional communicators benefit from research-based communications decision-making. Today's conversation is brought to you by Prime Research and powered by OnStream Media. To submit a question or comment at any time during the webcast, please click the Ask a Question button on the bottom of your screen. Simply type your message into the box and click on the Submit button. Alternatively, you can submit your question via Twitter using hashtag PRIMEChat. All questions will be answered at the end of today's presentation. At this time, it is my pleasure to turn the floor over to today's moderator, Mark Weiner. Mark, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and thanks everybody for joining us today. And thanks in particular to Steve Cody for sharing his insights and expertise. Steve, in addition to being the co-founder of Peppercomm, is the vice chair of the Institute for Public Relations, who, with Prime, co-sponsors the PRIMEChat. Outside of his professional duties, Steve is a mountain climber and a stand-up comedian. I'm sure we'll have get a taste of his of what he does when he's on stage today. When he's on stage, so Steve, I welcome you to PRIMEChat, and we look forward to hearing more.
Thank you, Mark. Just in terms of the audience members, my motto is expect less when I perform comedy, so that will be my goal here today as well. So thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it, and I wanted to get right into it in terms of addressing becoming a research-driven organization. And really, my first slide is all about, here it is that really we've been around for 22 years, and research has always been a part of our public relations campaign. We literally, over the years, have never really gone to market on a client's behalf without some sort of research, co-branded survey, with academia or some other third-party source to quantify a distinct problem or opportunity in the marketplace, and then position our client as the best possible solutions provider. So we've always been about research. In addition, from day one, I think we're one of the few firms that does this. I learned this actually from having lunch with Harold Burson, who said it used to be standard operating procedure at Burson Marsteller for every one of their account reps to basically play a fly on the wall and attend client sales calls so that they could hear firsthand what the client's customer had to say, how the client handled objections, etc. And I can't tell you how much sitting in on client sales calls has added in terms of the depth of the program that we and the specificity in terms of addressing the client's customer specific needs. And in several instances, it's actually helped us help a client redirect their strategic direction, which an ad agency had created for them, because what they were selling is not what the buyer was buying. So I highly encourage anyone and everyone on the agency side to invest that time. And it's not like you have to do it all the time, but it's made a huge difference for us. And anytime you can connect with the sales side of the client business, obviously, is a big plus, since unfortunately, most companies are still very siloed when it comes to sales and marketing. So that's been a big part of the 22 years. Audience experience is a variation on that theme. That's where we represent a client. We understand their value proposition. We obviously understand what the assignment is in terms of the marketing public relations campaign, but we don't want to rely solely on their quantitative research, again, usually provided either by, in-house or an ad agency, whatever. So we go out and put ourselves in the shoes of the client's customer and experience the client's value prop, if you will, from the outside in. So typically we identify 22 different touch points, everything from an in-store experience to what's it like when you go to the reception desk, what's it like when you call the 800 number, what's it like when you visit their website, how user-friendly is it. In terms of the actual experience, are they delivering exactly what they're trying to have us and the ad agency communicate? And in almost every instance, and the beauty is we videotape and audio tape all of this, and this goes for, a CFO, talking to CFOs and asking them their opinion on a Big Four accounting firm, to entrepreneurs who are trying to choose, which one of our clients' competitive base services or products, why they do what they do and how they do it, to literally going into automobile dealerships and, based upon a brand promise of fun, we are the fun brand, coming back and after 25 or 30 different of these audience experiences in different markets, saying that 20 out of 25 of our people said the experience was anything but fun. So that triggered a whole new session of training and really, opened the eyes of the client. And in terms of added value that research and public relations can provide, we were paid high. I was going to say you can't put a dollar figure on it. We were paid very well to do that. But audience experience is, again, part and parcel of what we've been doing from day one. Again, experiencing the client's value proposition from the outside in and testing it. I've already talked about co-branded surveys. We've been all about that. And we've also partnered with, we did a really cool co-brand with PR Week where we called it the Gap Series. And this was about 8 or 9 years ago. We wanted to identify why there was a gap between the CCO and legal, the CCO and sales, the CCO and CFO, and there was one other target group, I forget. But we did panel discussions one after another, 1 week after another, and we identified some really great takeaways that exponentially increased our knowledge base. And I'd like to think, because PR Week covered it from an editorial standpoint, also provided some really good tips and best practices for closing the gaps that still very much exist. As I said, I don't tell anyone on the phone that legal can be the bane of our existence. So, how do you get legal and PR or CorpCom, whatever, on the same page from the get-go? Same thing with sales and marketing. How do you stop the siloed approach? How do you get on the same page, et cetera? That was a biggie. The other one we did a couple years ago, which was really cool, was with The Economist, and it was all about owned content. And, we talked to 500 chief marketing officers, and we talked to 500 global executives, and we asked them what's most important in terms of when you visit a company's website, what's most important. And the global executive said, almost to a person, something that provides me with insights that help inform my decision making. It has to be something that is easy to read, quick to consume, and will give me an additional dimension on what I need. When we spoke to the CMOs, 90% of them said it's all about sales, products, features, benefits. So a huge gap between what the target audience was looking for and what the CMO mindset was, if you will, in terms of content. So those are just a couple of examples of what we've been doing up until today. I am now moving to, but we're a lot more than just research-driven organization. We are, as many agencies are today, fully integrated. We offer everything from customer experience and data analytics to website development, traditional PR and social. I like to say we do everything but Windows. But it's all about the client business problem. So we're not trying to sell, one service over another. We don't have our services compete with one another. It's all about, again, what's the business problem? Who's the target audience? I don't have to tell you guys this. Where do they congregate? How do you engage in a transparent way? And what are the best marketing communications tools with which to reach them? We have had any number of campaigns just in the last 6 months where outdoor advertising has proven incredibly effective. So here's something that's been around since 1920, and the ROI that we measured on billboards and outdoor advertising in some key markets outpaced everything else, digital, PR, et cetera. So we're all about whatever it takes to reach the target audience. We put data science behind our research. We follow the scientific approach. I'm going to have Jason Bake, Senior Manager of Analytics, talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. But again, we strive to solve business problems. I mean, we always looked at big data, and we continue to look at big data, but in the following way. If you can't answer the question, so what, it's useless. And having done an IPR co-branded survey with 25 CCOs and CMOs, they told us that they do the big data, they do the qualitative research, they look for the insights, they get the insights, and then they rely on their gut instincts to make the decision. That's not a highly informed gut decision, but there's the human factor that I think is being overlooked in this rush to digital, everything big data, et cetera, et cetera. And I talked about qualitative and quantitative. We're a big believer in not going with quant only, and Jason can address that when we get to it. But we think, you need both. And the big thing with qualitative is you can really dive down into the question why. Why this? Why did you do that? Why did you do that? How come you did that? Why? Well, why didn't you do this? Why? And that's the kind of thing that, as good as big data or data is, you can't really probe to the depth that you can in qualitative. So we make sure that we have an equal mix of both. So moving along, so what we did in terms of becoming a research-driven organization was to commit to becoming a research-driven organization and going out and finding the very best people we could find with the right mix of abilities, experience. We specialize in 3 areas, so we certainly wanted people who understood those 3 areas: finance, consumer, and we call it multi-industry, B2B, et cetera. But that was really critical. And we also have a separate measurement group. There's no question that both, research and measurement are they've always been important, but I think they're fundamental now to every single program. Every single client is looking for an ROI and how you arrive at an ROI. So, we make sure that we have 2 separate groups, but we make sure that research and measurement are in constant contact with each other and with the account team. And if what the research is showing and what the measurement is showing dictates a change in the campaign strategy, we make it on the fly. And that's the beauty of investing in both research, analytics, and measurement. It enables us to have real-time feedback in terms of something that is working, like I talked about the outdoor advertising, and something that may be just falling flat on its face. I say here we're going far beyond how other PR firms might define research. We strive to incorporate best practices from other disciplines. So this is real big on the corporate side, as you know. But we look to hire and/or subcontract with everyone from sociologists, psychologists, anthropologists, economists. I mean, we want to really get to what makes people tick. So for us, it's research on steroids. And again, when I introduce Jason, he can go into more detail than I have. But so we are very, very serious about it, and we're very serious about bringing new people with different takes, different perspectives on, again, what makes people tick, why do they make decisions, or why don't they make decisions. And we see it, as I said, when we interviewed the CCOs and the CMOs, we too see this as equal parts art and science. So there's a creativity to the research, and there's a creativity to the measurement. So it's not just getting hard numbers, hard figures, hard answers. It's also thinking about creative ways in which we can ask or probe in new and different ways for research. Same thing with measurement. We're constantly looking for new and different ways. So equal parts art and science. Moving ahead, case study. I'm going to turn this over to Jason, who will walk you through what I think is a textbook example of how research played a major role in turning a client 180 degrees around. Jason?
Hello, everyone. Just to formally introduce myself, my name is Jason. I lead the analytics team here. We have a team of data scientists, analysts, and researchers that try to put data behind everything that we do at Peppercomm. And just to give you an example of sort of the real-world scenario that we implement data and research for, we had a major insurance company that actually came to us earlier this year that had a genuine business problem. They had invested a lot of money into developing an online tool, an online diagnostic tool, that would allow their clients to essentially log in and take a look at the health of particular industries, particular competitors, and their own companies. The problem was that despite the good internal feedback this tool had gotten, not many of their actual CEO clients were buying off on it. If you logged into the platform, the design of the tool was actually pretty sophisticated. It was easy to use. It looked beautiful. So they were quite perplexed as to what the issue was, and that's sort of where they leveraged our research team. So they came to us and asked us to conduct a survey to see if there's anything that we could find out, and that's exactly what we did. We surveyed about, I want to say 200 C-suite execs, and asked them about 15 questions, asking them on what they liked about the tool, what they needed in a tool of this sort, what other competitors were doing, and stuff like that. And we actually found out that the tool was geared more towards technical people, more towards CTOs and CFOs, which is why the demographic of CEOs wasn't buying off on the tool. So in the end, we were able to sort of help our clients make sure that their sales team was being more targeted and more purposeful in their approach, and they were able to actually shift their strategy to target more CTOs, CFOs, CMOs, and try to put more research and development behind developing a tool that's actually useful for CEOs. So that was a really good example of sort of how we use our research abilities and our knowledge and our expertise to help clients solve a business problem.
Great. I would be remiss if I didn't address how the world has changed so dramatically and the impact on research in the last 18 to 24 months in terms of our new president, fake news, sexual harassment, all of the mega societal issues that are going on. So this has added a radically new dimension that all researchers, I believe, need to factor into their work. I think all CCOs and all agencies counseling CCOs really need to prepare for and respond to everything from Charlottesville to illegal immigration to national parks. It's no longer acceptable, and I'm skipping ahead to bullet number 4 or 5. It's no longer acceptable, according to a survey of 5,000 American workers, for the CEO or the C-suite to not say anything. they expect their CEO to speak up on issues of the day. So it's no longer a given to just keep your, to go the ostrich route and keep your head down. We're in a new normal now where every organization has all sorts of new liabilities and exposures that they need to be aware of and prepare for. And as I said, it runs the gamut from a head-on attack from President Trump to being the victim of fake news to inadvertently causing your own crisis, as Kerrig did when they were sponsoring the Sean Hannity show. And one person said, why are you sponsoring Sean Hannity? And somebody said, you're absolutely right. We're yanking our sponsorship of the Sean Hannity show. And YouTube went wild with all of the Hannity supporters doing all sorts of creative things in terms of blowing up their Keurig coffee makers, setting them on fire, et cetera. So you can inadvertently create a mega crisis if you don't know what you're doing. So we partnered back in May, and we're doing a new update, which we hope to release in February with the Institute for PR, that showed that 1/3 of the 25 or so are not prepared. They have not thought through all of their vulnerabilities. They have not looked at their entire supply chain in terms of whether or not their values are aligned with the values and corporate purpose and mission of their key customers, their key investors, their employees. So that's a critical part of the whole thing. And the other thing is there are still the best practice, and I'm quoting Roger Bolton of the Arthur Page Society president, the best practice here in terms of determining what to say, when to say it, and what channel to say it on is to make sure you've got your corporate purpose in place. And it's amazing how many companies are scrambling at this moment to figure out their corporate purpose. Up until 18 months or so ago, it was a nice to have. Now it's table stakes because your corporate purpose will be your North Star that will guide you in terms of how to respond to an attack or how not to respond to an attack. And that kind of consultation and that type of in-depth research is fundamental because not to single out a company, and I'm not suggesting anything, but there's a brand new CEO at GE, and he's a lifer. He's been there forever. I wonder if anyone has looked into his track record, his past track record. We just saw the CEO of ESPN step down because of past inappropriate behavior. So there's a whole new set of minefields out there that research can play a critical role in. And the other point I wanted to make is that, traditionally research churns out a persona that and I'm using a consumer example, or it could be a B2B example, but typically they do researchers do all of their homework and they say, your target is a 41-year-old woman with 2 kids, her husband works as well, she has very little time available to her, and these are the media, that she goes to obtain information, but they don't know what her political affiliation is. So if you don't factor in knowing what, whether she's red state, blue state, in between, whatever, your entire persona can be, blown to hell, as Kerrig found out, if you don't understand and add that component to your research as you're developing a persona of your target audience. And that's something that we are now doing routinely. So I think, I don't know how many of you are doing that, but I think that's something that's new and it will only be more important as we move into the uncertainty of the future. Moving right along. I wanted Jason to address the type of person that we're looking for in terms of research and analytics, and if you can address measurement as well, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. So obviously we're always looking for very bright people to join our teams. And because I'm part of the analytics team, it comes out saying that the ideal candidate already has a solid foundation in data and following the scientific approach. So anyone who has an understanding of the current platforms out there, anyone who sort of embodies the ideal that they don't like taking shots in the dark, that's sort of a given. More so than that, we like to take it a step further. As Steve mentioned earlier in our presentation, we really try to tackle the business problems, try to provide creative solutions to issues that our clients may have. And when we're usually agnostic in terms of platforms, in terms of vendors, in terms of channels, whatever you can think of, we like to really provide the best solution for the business case. And part of that comes with a person's personality in terms of a candidate. We look for people who are creative, who are empathetic, who are curious, and that sort of goes along with our cultural fit. We don't need people to just give you a number for the sake of giving you a number. There's no point in giving you a graph or a chart without explanation. We really look for the people who are able to take that data and weave a story out of it, sort of playing along the lines of getting that qualitative aspect into the quantitative. Furthermore, we always look for people who are both interested in the news and in sort of psychology or the understanding of people, just because that's so core to what we do every day. It's helpful to have someone who has that innate love already. And again, people who can critically think about a problem instead of just reiterating something that someone else might have said. We like to think of the analytics team as a consulting arm where we have researchers, we have people who specialize in measurement, people who can tag your website, people who specialize in traditional and social PR tracking, and we really try to approach it from a wide breadth of experience.
And what Jason said about the cultural fit is fundamental. We have a very definitive culture that all of our people go through stand-up comedy training, and we like to think that it's helped improve our culture and our ability to communicate with one another. So we don't look for people who have egos. We don't look for people who take themselves too seriously. We don't look for people who are not team-oriented. So having a sense of humor is a key component. I know it's kind of an aside here to research, but in terms of our DNA, even if this ideal candidate has everything, but he or she comes from a large agency and is used to delegating things and expects to be treated like a king or a queen, we will not hire that person. So the cultural fit is absolutely fundamental to this. We just have a couple more slides. I wanted Jason just to talk about what's on the horizon that we see, and then I'll wrap it up, and then we can go to questions.
So when a lot of people in the industry think about research, they often think about the big research firms out there, so Millward Brown, Nielsen, Research Now. But in recent years, I think we've been seeing now more than ever big tech giants sort of coming into this field. Facebook, Amazon, LinkedIn, Google, all really putting investments behind this research arms and making sure that they have a good understanding of sort of what people are doing so that they can better target, they can better serve media, they can better help their clients reach these people. Along with that, there's a great site that was recently launched by Steve Ballmer called usafacts.org. I believe there's an A missing in there. But it goes along with the idea that the more data that becomes available, the easier it is for us to help our clients. So surveys and quality of interviews are great, but they suffer from the same limitation that, say, a scientific experiment would. If you're conducting a scientific experiment, the person that you're talking to knows that they're part of the experiment. It's a very formal setting where you sit down with them and they're giving you responses to questions that you sort of have listed already. That's different from seeing how a person reacts in nature. So that's sort of like a scientific experiment versus a natural experiment. And as more companies, as more individuals make data publicly available, that allows us to sort of add layers of depth to our understanding of people. I'm not saying research will always be an important part of any client engagement. It'll never go away. But the fact that we're able to sort of test what a person says versus what a person does just allows us to gain that much more deeper insight into sort of how they think and sort of what makes them tick, as Steve mentioned. Along those lines, we also try to take a look at the world outside of just media or public relations. Angela Duckworth is a MacArthur genius and a social psychologist who's starting January 2018. She's doing some great work with a superhero team of academics. They're taking on essentially an unprecedented task in the form of trying to understand why people do the things that they do. I know that sounds lofty at first, but they're actually running a lot of experiments and putting a lot of money behind understanding, let's say, why a person who's on a diet might cheat often, why a person who wants to quit smoking continues to smoke, why a person who wants to save money might spend lavishly every so often. So it's really trying to understand the psychology behind why people do what they do. And obviously, psychology and media, there's a little bit of a gap, but it's just to illustrate the point that we do look at other disciplines. And at the end of the day, psychology is trying to understand people. We here at Peppercomm, we're trying to help our clients understand their people, their audiences, and their customers. So it's related in a way, and we try to leverage the best practices across the board.
Now, we're also trying to figure out why some people think Bruce Springsteen is the greatest rock star ever. A little bit of an inside joke there, but I'm not a big Bruce fan. So we wrap it up with how to get started. So assuming you're at ground zero, and I hate to assume for obvious reasons, the logical first steps in becoming a research-driven organization is you've got to set aside the money, and you've got to find the right people. And Jason went through the kinds of people that we're looking for, not suggesting that that list of qualities, characteristics, and attributes are right for you, but if you're not going to spend the money, you're not going to become research-driven. The right vendors, partners, freelancers, absolutely fundamental. Because I'm, vice chair of IPR, I cannot, share names, but we've vetted very, very carefully in terms of vendors and partners, and we have a tremendous group of freelancers that augment the in-house research group. As we've said earlier, even though it's a consulting wing, if you will, research is fully integrated into everything we're doing, and they have line of sight in terms of everything that the agency is doing, so that if they think they can add something, we add something. So you can't just put them, in the corner and just let them do their thing. So you have to be fully integrated. And again, flipping it around, your employees have to fully cooperate with your research group and look for opportunities to obviously upsell the service to the existing and prospective client base, which is why we have internal sessions where the research, the measurement group, analytics will show our account people exactly what they do, how they do it, and how it might benefit our clients. And, it's like anything else. I mean, I'm an entrepreneur. I have failed more times than I care to count, but you have to be willing to fail, make mistakes as you test out your research group, your analytics group, your measurement group, and test it out. Go through beta tests before you turn on the switch, because once the switch is on, and if things go wrong, you immediately could damage your client relationship and/or your image and reputation in the industry. So test before you're ready to say, hey, world, we're the ABC agency, and we have got a world-class research group. Let us introduce you to them. So with that, Mark, I will wrap it up and turn it over to you for questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And we have questions from our audience. They fall into a general category of the business side of research and public relations. First question is, how do you get a client to pay a PR firm for research when they hired you for public relations?
Well, I mean, one of the things that we do, that we talk about is, as I said earlier, we take a different approach to the way we undertake research, and we talk about the fact that we are very skeptical about the quantitative research that they have assembled either internally or externally, and that we pride ourselves on testing it, making sure what has been provided to the client to drive the PR campaign is in fact accurate. And we cite countless examples, as I have in this presentation, where the data that they're going on, the research that they're basing their campaign on, can be flawed. Maybe just in a little way, a slight way, or there have been several instances where it's been completely off base. So we kind of make it a prerequisite. Obviously, there are going to be some clients say sorry, but that's the exception to the norm. I've found, especially in the last couple of years, clients are very open to agencies that don't buy in to what they're being told to do. We make that that's kind of a differentiator for us. We're not going to say, hey, I'm sorry, Facebook, we're not going to work for you because we don't believe your research. But we say, we like to think that we can get even closer to your target audience with our research approach. It'll cost X, it'll take this amount of time, but we are pretty confident we will find something that's just a little bit off and that we can go a little bit deeper on that your existing research simply has not produced.
And just to add to that, a lot of research firms out there are specialists in research, but we like to position ourselves as sort of the problem solvers. We know your industry, we know your business, and so we're able to ask the right questions to sort of specifically get at the answer that a particular client might be looking for. Now, if you were to engage one of the larger research firms, like obviously they'd be able to help provide best practice in terms of writing a survey, but they might not know the in-depth insights or the details needed to write the perfect survey, which is sort of where we come in.
I see. So I can share also in my experience, a few years ago, Prime was hired by a PR firm to interview the firm's existing clients, former clients, and the kinds of clients they wanted to attract, as well as the PR firm matchmakers that companies hire to conduct RFPs and identify the best candidates. And one of the findings I think fits in here now. The finding was that while PR firms without a research practice may be invited to the RFP process, they will never win. So when somebody asks a question like this, how do you get a client to pay? I think one way, and I believe you're saying this, is that the research is embedded in the offer. It's not an extra. It's not an add-on. It's a fundamental aspect of what you're offering. The other thing I would suggest to any agency who's challenged in this way is that if you choose not to participate in providing clients with research, either in-house as Peppercomm does or some way of outsourcing through a partnership, there's a cost for not doing research. And in the end, it will cost the agency business if it cannot do this sort of thing. So,
and I would, Mark, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. And I would add that I talked about at the very beginning, audience experience. When there's a really important new business pitch, we love to bring the voice of the customer into the actual presentation, whether it's video or audio. So it's not just us presenting our recommendations, but verifying it and backing it up and showing them a glimpse into the type of research that we do. So whether it's the voice of CFOs or moms or millennials or whatever, it's made a fundamental difference in terms of our ability to win business.
I understand. So here's a follow-up question. Deep dive research is great, but how does a communications PR department accomplish something similar with limited budgets or no research budget whatsoever?
That's a good question. So larger research engagements usually cost a few, like tens of thousands of dollars, but there are cheaper options out there. ORC surveys allow you to quickly turn around 5 to 10 question surveys in about a week, and that really does help add a quantitative layer to whatever you might be doing in terms of pitches or helping out clients. Obviously, assuming that you have no budget, I mean, it's hard to say if there's anything that you can do. Obviously, the internet is your friend. There's a slew of free tools out there that could help. I mean, you might not necessarily be able to ask questions to particular people, but there's great tools such as like Google Trends that will give you an idea of sort of the big things that are being searched by people, and that can sort of help inform you in at least some capacity.
And the other thing is strategic partnerships. If you can look at the media, they are often interested in partnering, like The Economist did. We've partnered with any number of universities to get that research done in advance in terms of the target audience. So we will do that in an abbreviated form, and then the client would typically pay us to complete that full research. But just a snapshot in terms of telling the prospect that we have great relationships with the Kellogg School at Northwestern, or The Economist, as I mentioned earlier. And we just did a few, quick questions of your target audience. The two of us did. And we'd like to, sell this into you because this is what we have found out already. So I think that's another way to approach not having your own research capability. Look for strategic partners.
Yeah, I think, and let me amplify on one aspect of what you said, Steve, and that is universities. Universities have public relations programs where research is more prevalent in the academy than it is in the actual practice. There are certain schools that emphasize research as part of the their communications programs. The Institute for Public Relations, with whom Steve and I are affiliated, can provide that kind of direction into which universities may be interested in this sort of thing. But professors are eager to give their students real-world experience, and some of these graduate school programs have very experienced communicators as students. So it's a way to get something for free or at some very low cost in exchange for the experience that you'd be providing to the university and its students. And of course, all these free tools. I think another aspect to the deep dive, deep dive research is great. That was the way the question was asked. But I think there's also the notion of good enough research. So, so as you were saying, there's expensive ways to do this, and there are trade-offs for the high cost. You get better data, maybe better insights. But for some cases, just being partially right is better than being totally in the dark. And there may be ways to do that, achieve that with free tools. I have other questions, unless you want to, any response to that question about low budgets, no budgets?
I was just going to say, we literally have a meeting with a university at 4 o'clock today to talk to them, graduate school students, about a couple of different opportunities we have where we would partner with them for an incredibly low price. So as Mark said, there are at least 5 or 6 top public relations, communications, graduate school programs that are dying to look for real-world experience. So we are literally meeting with one this afternoon.
There you go. Let's see. So final question from the audience, and then maybe we can get more questions and or just continue the conversation. You talked about a case study where you surveyed C-suite executives. Usually it's very difficult and expensive to reach that audience. Do you have any tips for making it easier to survey high-level decision makers?
That's a really good question. I think now more than ever, with cybersecurity as a big prominent topic, it's getting harder and harder to reach these high-level executives. There are firms out there that specialize in reaching these people. It usually involves getting on the phone with executives, making sure that they understand that we're doing research and that we're not just sort of like scam or phishing company. Another part of that, I think, is also trying to leverage your networks as best as possible. Obviously, I know most of the research that we do on our side, when we take a look at the social and political environment, Steve leverages his network to make sure that we can reach out as much as possible. There's no great answer to that, but there are companies out there that do specialize in sort of helping companies that struggle with getting C-suite.
The other thing I was going to say is Mark, is once you've got the client and we're looking to get deeper into the mindset, the decision-making process of the CFO, the CEO, et cetera, we'll ask the client to make the introductions for us and, do like a half-hour phone interview, et cetera, et cetera. And, if we can do 25 qualitative interviews with CFOs in terms of the kind of materials they need, the kinds of services that they're looking for from a particular client, et cetera, we can come back with some very, very serious qualitative research that would prompt changes and or additions to the communications program. And we've done that with any number of clients.
Got it. So you're taking advantage of the client, CFO in this case, as a linchpin to make introductions that allow you to bypass the usual obstacles.
Bingo.
Okay, got it. So here's another question. I'll read this verbatim. As with so many PR calls and talks and forums, I have not heard the words competition, opposition, or rival mentioned. And why not? Is it that your research team lacks that aptitude, or that clients don't care, or something else?
Can you define what you mean by competition, opposition, or rival? Like competing for research with a research company? Is that what that question?
I'm going to. This is an online question. So if the person who asked that question wants to amplify, that would be great. What I infer from the question is that it goes back to the idea of public relations as a business and helping clients and helping the agency compete in the marketplace, basically using research to win.
Yeah, well, as I said, when we can bring the voice of the customer in, it's a definitive competitive advantage when we're up against whoever, the large agencies, fellow mid-sized agencies, or boutiques. So that's one point. The other is obviously showing results from previous campaigns. As far as I'm not sure what I understand about the opposition. The rivals.
Sometimes, like in a commercial situation, it might be a competitor. In a public affairs situation, it might be opposition. That's how I take it.
Okay. Well, we're not
the other party.
Yeah, I mean, public affairs we don't go near, so I wouldn't be able to, address public affairs. But Jason, can you add anything else to that?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of analyzing competition, I mean, we do that quite frequently. Obviously, I can't speak to any other agencies, but whenever we take a look at a survey or at an interview that we're doing for a particular client, we try to layer on information on other competitors that we can see. It's obviously hard for us to understand exactly who our competitors are targeting, but it is easy enough for us to take a look at their coverage, take a look at their websites, take a look at the pitches or their media that they're putting out to see if we can back out into strategy. And more often than not, that actually gives us a good path or a guiding light to influence our strategy as well. So I think the lesson here isn't to just try to think of research as one survey that you have to do for a client and then for a specific competitor, but it's sort of aggregating all this knowledge that we're able to gather and sort of piecing it together to form a full picture.
So the competition was about the client's competition, Mark? If that's the question, we do a lot of due diligence in terms of, what does the competition already own? What are they best known for? What does our client do differently? What are the white space opportunities? And based upon those white space opportunities, how could we drive a campaign to become synonymous with that opportunity in the marketplace? If that is what the question meant, we do quite a bit of competitive intelligence in terms of, let's say it's General Motors, and we'll look at what Ford's doing, BMW, et cetera, what is the one area that they're missing that plays to our strength and that could drive a campaign, if that's what that question was aimed.
Yeah, and I think I could ask a follow-up question related to that, but maybe a little bit more general. And that is, to what degree do you see public relations and research as a contributing factor? To what degree do you see public relations as, an altruistic, symmetrical exchange of ideas, symmetrical communication, or do you see public relations being driven by the desire to win for commercial purposes? Is what I'm thinking.
Well, public relations and corporate communications, or whatever you want to call it, we're part of the mix. So we are part of finding the business solution and partnering with whomever else the client has partnered with, and or advocating. And as you know, Mark, as a member of the Arthur Page Society, we advocate for the CCO to be kind of the steward of the C-suite, to make sure that every other key player at that table has bought into the communication strategy, has bought into the crisis response, has bought in to the corporate purpose. So I see PR being kind of the fulcrum, or the hub, if you will, but fully integrated with all of the other disciplines. I don't see it off in left field. I don't see research off in left field. Today it's all about fully integrated.
Yeah, and I think in my own experience, clients more and more are trying to make the connection between public relations activity and business performance. And I think they wouldn't be doing that if it wasn't about winning and helping the business in whatever way, generate revenue, win market share, improve profitability.
Right, and there's also one thing that the other disciplines can't help them with, and that is on the crisis front, how many things didn't happen, how many articles didn't appear, how many times 60 Minutes didn't go after a client. So, a lot of that is gray, but it's we're getting our arms around trying to figure out how best to measure that as well, and that's something that that we and we alone do best. A CMO or a marketer is not going to understand how to respond to a Trump attack on your company. Corporate communications officer, a high-level public relations counselor, they will.
Yeah, so I see that in terms of controlled, semi-controlled, and uncontrolled communication, where marketers understand controlled communications because they can control the message, the frequency, the placements, everything, because it's paid for. Whereas PR is only semi-controllable at best, and sometimes uncontrolled like you're saying, where the life of an event just overtakes normal communication, the normal communications process. So the role of public relations becomes one of avoiding catastrophic costs, not just driving revenue, which is the sexy way to think of PR, that PR is driving sales, sexy, but not as impactful as avoiding catastrophic costs, especially when you look at some companies who have found themselves on the wrong side of a man-made catastrophe, and the losses in market capitalization overwhelm any benefits that come from sales activity through PR. At least
and on that point, I mean, it's really, advertising's not going to turn around, a mega crisis with paid ads in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, digital ads, whatever. It's going to be transparent articles in whatever, online, offline, journalism rather, that's going to help turn the tide and rebuild trust and rebuild confidence in that company. I'm not a fan of, full-page ads in the New York Times or whatever as a way in which to communicate, we're sorry this happened, these are our values, et cetera, because again, it's what you want to say, how you want to say it, where you want it to be placed, when you want it to run. The unpredictability of public relations and the media is exactly what gives it its credibility. If the reporter or reporters or influencers or whomever, bloggers, are willing to, listen to your side of the story, I think that's the single best way to start rebuilding trust and rebounding from a major crisis.
Excellent. So we have 4 minutes left. I want to thank you again, Steve. And let me just make sure. Let me just see something here. I want to make sure that your contact information is up. Could you advance the slide to the last slide?
Oh, sure. Sorry.
People can contact you if they have further questions. I also want to let people know. Why not say your email address or your Twitter handle or something, Steve, before we run?
Yeah, because I think it just says thank you at the end. It's Cody, SCODY at Peppercomm, PEPPERCOMM.com. It's named after my late black lab, Pepper. That's another key point to know.
Okay. And so let me say thanks to you both. Great conversation, lots of insights, and appreciate you sharing as openly as you have. Let me invite everybody who's on the line to join us January 23rd for our next Prime Chat with Cindy Villafranca from Southwest Airlines, who's going to be sharing great stories about big data and how public relations data contributes to big data solutions. So thanks, everybody.
Our pleasure.
We'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.